This is a Festool Domino, probably one of the finest jointing systems money can buy, apart from when it's not cutting accurately, and this one isn't. Today we're going to calibrate it and sort that out. Sounds good? Stick around. Welcome back to the Woodgrafter. Now recently I had a commission to make a small side table and I made it, and I decided to use the Domino to simplify the jointing for me. Now as I was using the Domino on its finest setting, what I found out is it's not cutting accurately. My wood was misaligned. So I want to fix that today. So we're going to calibrate the Domino. Huge shout out to Half Inch Shy. If you've not seen his videos, I'll put a link into the description. This is his technique. I'm just using it here and passing the knowledge on. So let me start off by making a simple cut with the Domino, using it as I normally would on its tightest setting, and I'll show you the problem I'm talking about. I've got two pieces of stock here and I just want them to join together face to face for no apparent reason other than demonstration. So in normal good practice, I would take a square and I will put a line across the two pieces of timber, and that line is where I want my Domino to go. I'm using 5mm by 30mm Domino, so standard type of size. And again, it doesn't matter what size your stock is, what size your joins are, this problem will show up every time you use it if you have the issue that I have. So the Domino is set for a 15mm depth of cut because I'm using 30mm Dominoes, and I've got it down around about 22mm on the stop, so a 14mm cut from the top of the stock. And again, that doesn't matter, that's not the error we're talking about. So the two mortises cut, suitable size Domino, and right there is my problem. Can you see those two lines do not line up? There's an error in my cutting somewhere. Now that's a repeatable error, so it's not user error, it's repeatable error, so therefore it's an inaccuracy in the machine. Now the reason that you get that error is because this plastic piece here on the Domino, the one with the centre mark on it that you use to line up, isn't calibrated in the factory. It's one of those things that should be user calibrated, but nobody ever tells you that. So if you've got one of these out of the box and you're using it, it's worthwhile checking to see whether it's calibrated or not. It's not something that anybody ever tells you about. And you'll see here, there's two silver screws here. These are Torx 10, T10 screws. And in that plastic guide, there's elongated holes here, and this has got the ability to slide backwards and forwards so you can calibrate it. On the back of the machine, you've got these three marks here. You've got a line here, a line here, and a line here. This line here is actually factory set, factory calibrated, and that sets to the center point of the drill bit. So that's a reference line we actually want to work for. So we need to get this plastic thing here to line up perfectly with that, and once we've done that, the machine is then calibrated. So in order to calibrate this, you're going to need some things. You're going to need a roll of some sort of tape. This is just yellow masking tape. You're going to need a piece of scrap wood. Now this piece of wood ideally is a similar sort of width to your masking tape. It's longer than the base of the Domino because you want to be able to clamp this into position, but it's not so wide that these alignment pins, these flappy paddles, interfere, because obviously that tends to push your stock away. So you want something that's going to fit comfortably in the middle of that device. It also needs to be square. And what I've got here is a right angle here and a right angle here. So this face is 90 degrees to this face, and this face is 90 degrees to this face. So that means I'll be using this here as a reference edge, and I don't care about this side. So I just marked it with these squares in the corner so I know how that's square. I'm also using a marking gauge. This is the type with the single wheel on it, the very, very sharp wheel, and we'll look at why we're using that in a second. You're obviously going to need a Torx driver, a T10 driver, and some sort of handy clamp as well, just to keep things in position. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take the insulation tape and I'm going to run it across the length of that board. Doesn't matter where it sits, just put it on top of that board like so. and I'm going to run that down both sides like that. And my marks still show through this, which is quite useful, so I still know my reference edge. And I'm going to take my marking wheel and I'm going to set it somewhere in the middle. It doesn't matter where, but just somewhere in the middle. I'm going to lock that down. Now what's important is I use the reference edge here that we made by squaring the stock up. I'm just going to run my wheel down my stock. And I'm going to do that on both sides. So I'm going to turn it in this direction and I'm going to use the same reference edge. I'm going to run that down. Stock. Now I can peel the tape off again away from my reference edge, and that gives me a really nice clean line on my stock that I can see. Now I know, because I used that reference edge, that the edge of that tape there that we cut with the marking wheel is directly lined up to the edge of that tape there on that side. Now hopefully you're ahead of me, so if I line up the edge of that tape with that reference line and turn the machine over and line up that plastic thing to that reference line, then they must be in a line. That's exactly what you do to calibrate it. So I'm just going to set the depth of the machine so it's not loose. So that's now resting on top of that stock, so it's nice and firm. I'm going to reference that edge of that tape onto that reference line there. Then come with my clamp and just clamp that into position like so. Now because I know that face of the stock is square, and I know that that corner is square, and I know that this line is parallel to that edge for the references, so I now know I've extended that center line all the way up through that stock. But more importantly, on this side, that point on that tape there is exactly that center line. So now I'm going to come in with my T10, loosen off this plastic bracket, and then I can adjust it so the black mark lines up with the tape. Now just a word of caution, what I've discovered is this actually doesn't seat square, so you can actually tighten this thing slightly out of square. So if you line up the base of this, tighten it out of square, the top of this is then out of alignment and gives you problems. So there's a small hole just inside that plastic clamp that can just actually take a T10 torque quite well. So push it down, so you're pushing it into the body, and that makes sure everything's nice and square, and then just slide that left and right using your screwdriver to give you the adjustments. And that way you know that that line stays parallel to the yellow reference line that you've made, and once you've got the crosshair on that edge, then in theory that's lined up. I'm just resting it on these blocks of wood just so it makes it easier, otherwise I'm working at an angle and it's tipping. I'm just going to tighten these down a little bit so there's ever slight resistance when I start to move this. And pulling it towards me with the screwdriver, I'm just going to line up that crosshair with the edge of the tape, which is there. I'm pushing down with my finger to hold it firm. Nip that down and then tighten it down. And now we can give it a go. And in theory, this is now nicely calibrated. You can see there that those lines now line up. So we've gone from this offset here to this alignment here, simply by making sure that that plastic line lines up with this line on the back. So there you go, really that simple. Now I've got it calibrated, I've got a whole host of picture frames I need to batch out, hence I wanted to get the Domino where it needed to be. I'll crack on with that and I'll see you next time on the Woodgrafter. Take care.